Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew your elastics for your ballet shoes. So, we're going to take the shoes out. You will see silica packets and some extra labels. That stuff you can get rid of. You can also take the labels out of the inside of your shoe because we're not going to want to sew through those. Fun fact, most ballet shoes are cut as straights, meaning there isn't an anatomical right or left. So it actually doesn't matter which foot you put your shoe on. Okay, so we're ready to fit our shoes. This elastic here is the drawstring that will make sure the shoe fits snugly against the edge of my foot without leaving a gap. I'm just going to tie a double knot right here. And that's just going to make sure that this stays in place. This excess elastic, I'm either going to tuck into my shoe so that it's hidden out of the way, or if you do have a lot of excess elastic, you can also just take it and trim it so that you don't have a lot of excess that you'll have to tuck into your shoe. These elastics here, we're going to cross over, and the other side as well, and I want it to come to this inside seam of the shoe. So on both sides of the shoe, you'll see a seam in the middle, and that's telling me where the elastic is coming to. When I'm fitting the shoe, I want to make sure that the elastic fits right across my foot without being too loose, but I also don't want it to be cutting in too tightly to my foot. So I want to make sure that it's straight. You want to do this with a flexed foot so that you can see how the shoe is actually going to fit on your foot. And then you can mark it, take a pencil and mark to the inside, and you'll know that this is where, and then I'll know that this is where I want to sew my shoes. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take my thread and put it through the eye of the needle. Once it's pulled through, I want to get the thread doubled. So I'm going to make sure I get the two ends here. This helps if you just loop it around your finger, roll that through, and then once I tug on it, I've got a knot on the end of the string. Now I can start sewing my shoe. So I've got the elastic, it's going to cross over, and if you look on the side of your shoe, you'll see that there's a seam, and that seam is going to help me line up where I want to sew my elastic. Make sure when you put the elastic through that it's one straight elastic and it hasn't twisted over, because otherwise it will be twisted on your foot. I'm going to start sewing from the inside, so I put my needle through from the inside of the shoe, and I want to try and come up in line with the seam, but also in line with the seam on the side of the shoe here, just so that it's neat. I'm going to pull that all the way through, and you'll see that then it comes to the knot on the inside of the shoe. So the knot is in place and I've come to the end. To keep my seams neat, I'm going to try and bring my needle back through right in line with the seam here. You're going to have to push a little bit because you're now pushing through heavy canvas as well as the elastic on the end. Back on the inside, you're just going to want to be careful that where your elastic goes through isn't stitching through the drawstring, because otherwise you won't be able to make the shoe fit to your foot properly. So I want to make sure that I'm sewing my elastic in this area here. Once I've done one side, I'm going to get my other elastic crossed over so I can do the other side as well. So I'm lining up with the seam on the shoe and setting my other elastic in place. So they'll make a cross when it crosses over my foot. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I've got my needle and I've tied a knot on the end. And I'm going to start lining up with the seam of the shoe so it's lining up with my inside seam as well as the seam under the drawstring, and pushing it through the canvas to stitch to the other side. I want to come back in what is called an invisible seam, meaning that from the outside I'm not going to see it. So I'm going to want to come right back in exactly where my thread came through, and I push it right back through the other side. Once you've got all these elastics in, you want to be careful that you don't cross over and sew through it again. So make sure that you come right through. Once I've gone across both sides, you'll see that I now have a neat line of stitching on the inside of the elastic, but from the outside, you really can't see any extra stitching because I've always come right back in where I left off. Now I'm going to tie a knot so that I can finish this side of the shoe. When my foot is in the shoe, I'm not going to want a lump of a knot on the inside of my shoe against my foot, so I'm going to try and make my knot go underneath this little edge of the canvas. So my thread is right now through here. I'm going to tuck it through this side. So I've put one extra stitch here. To tie the knot on the end, I just want to get a little bit of a loop. So I'm stitching just through that little bit of the canvas. And there's a loop here. I'm going to go around this, so I'm going through the loop, and I'll go 3 times so that I've got a knot. Once I pull that, that will make a knot. It's in nice and tight. You can do one more stitch to just make sure it's in, and then break it off. Now my elastic is sewn into place, and I've got one shoe done. See you in class.